Hey ladies, what's up? It's Brittany here, back with another episode of the Ladystrong Fitcast. And today we have Becca from Fit Mom Lifestyle here to talk about hormones and to answer all of your guys' burning questions.
So the big question is this: how were two women who didn't cheat and purchase a gym franchise model, how were they able to spread their mission and purpose by empowering and transforming hundreds of women's lives through fitness, nutrition, mindset, and accountability with a micro gym business model of women only? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answer. We are Ladystrong Fitness.
Excited to have you back on the podcast. I know you've been with us once before, and then you've been in studio with us a couple times. So it's been a little while. So why don't you just go ahead and reintroduce yourself to our audience, tell them a little bit about yourself and what you do, and then we'll dive into some of the questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am Becca Chilzenkowski. I am a functional practitioner. I work solely with women, and my main focus on social media is hormones. Hormones plague a lot of women with symptoms. We'll talk about why hormones are often not the root issue. They're kind of they're dramatic. They cause a lot of symptoms for people. They can be really debilitating for some women. And yes, they can be a root, but they're typically not the only root issue. So I love hormones. In my personal journey, that was kind of my pain point. I was an athlete in college, and after college I found CrossFit, and it helped me lose 50 pounds and get, super, super lean, but I lost my period. I was dealing with constipation. I was dealing with massive mood swings and irritability, very low stress tolerance, and then had to go through IVF to have my first kid, kind of the ups and downs. I had 3 pregnancies in 5 years. And every time I tried to come back out of a pregnancy, it would, there would be a lot of hormone related issues and, just really heavy periods and lots of bloating and PMS and all the things. And so I have since learned my body is now very sensitive to stress because of the damage I've done with lots and lots of overtraining and too many, years of probably under eating for that. And so I have to be really careful now, because every time I stress my body a little bit too much, it shows. I see it in my period, I see it in my mood, I see it in my weight, and my body is just now sensitive because of what I've done. And so I dove head into understanding female hormones better, and helping women. And so that's how we work with clients now is we do functional testing. Everything is holistic based. It's all remote. I work with all of my clients remote, and we are very fortunate that we have, grown a community and a practice of being able to help, thousands of women now. We have 5 practitioners on staff, and we help women with anything ranging from gut issues to immune related issues to hormones to, mold and toxins and all the things. So that's what I do now.
That's awesome. That's a great story. And I think it's a testament to the fact that you have had your own journey. So it's helpful because you've been there. So, and I think what I want to point out specifically about your story is kind of the overtraining aspect and how people think that this exercise, get really lean. And then we just almost run your body into the ground, and you don't even realize it because you look good. So the aesthetics and the vanity of it is there, but you also don't understand how literally, and now it's a lifelong effect for you. It is something that will affect you for the rest of your life, and it will affect how you're able to move your body for the rest of your life too. And so I think it's important to get people to understand that, exercise is good in moderation, and there are ways to do it specifically for you, but you don't need to work out 6 days, 7 days a week, twice a day, and all this crazy stuff to actually see really great results. So cool. So we're just going to dive right into these questions because I feel like you got a lot of really good questions. And like I mentioned, I want to try to stay a little bit surface level. And then if obviously people have additional questions on top of this, they're always welcome to reach out to you. We'll talk to people about how they can get a hold of you and follow you on social media at the end here. So we'll start with the first question that we got here. And it says, how do your hormones affect your results, and which hormones could be potentially affecting your results? We'll start with that.
Yeah. So hormones can definitely affect your results. And I'm assuming we mean impact weight loss and body composition. And those are important, right? And I think something to understand is that it's a constant balancing act. And a lot of times when we think of hormones, we think of female hormones, we think of sex hormones. So estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, which can absolutely play a role in weight loss, body composition, mainly what I see most with females is some variation of estrogen dominance.
Mhm.
So estrogen is our basically quick rundown during your cycle. You have estrogen is kind of higher during the first half of the cycle. That's why a lot of women feel really good in the first half of their cycle after their period.
Mhm.
They feel energetic, they feel strong, they feel leaner.
Mhm.
And then the second, you reach ovulation usually. And then the second half of your cycle, progesterone should rise, making you feel a little bit more chill. Don't really want to do
Mhm.
as much, maybe a little bit more fluffy, and that's okay.
Mhm.
That the biggest problem is that with chronic stress, females tend to deplete progesterone. And so we end up estrogen dominant, not just because estrogen is high. In a lot of cases, it isn't high. It's
Mhm.
just high in relation to progesterone. And that's what
Mhm.
causes the symptoms that a lot of women feel leading into their cycle. And in
Mhm.
perimenopause and menopause, what happens is progesterone will linearly decline until it's basically nothing. But
Mhm.
progesterone becomes kind of erratic. It declines, but it has these spikes. It has these points where like the ovaries are gonna try to make it, and it
Mhm.
wants you to continue to get a period because the
Mhm.
body's still fighting for it. And
Mhm.
so females during perimenopause and menopause tend to experience a lot of estrogen dominance, especially if they're dealing with stress. Their liver's burdened, they're not going to the
Mhm.
bathroom regularly, or they're dealing with gut issues, so they're not
Mhm.
detoxing hormones well. So it's
Mhm.
this whole situation. But either way,
Yeah.
estrogen dominance a lot of times will impact your thyroid, which will
Mhm.
also impacts metabolism. And estrogen can cause a lot of weight gain and weight redistribution. So a lot of
Okay.
women experience like all of a sudden I have this stomach that I've never
Mhm.
had before. And that
Mhm.
can be estrogen, but it can also be insulin.
Mhm.
So insulin's another hormone that is,
Mhm.
and I would say the two big hormones that are going to impact your progress are insulin and cortisol, and
Okay.
they play together. So
Mhm.
cortisol, we all know, is stress.
Mhm.
Chronic stress means chronic elevated cortisol, which means chronically elevated blood sugars.
Mhm.
So when your blood sugars are higher, in the extreme case, we think diabetics, right? And
Right.
diabetics struggle with weight. A
Mhm.
lot of times, though, I believe the percentage is 90% of the adult population has some level of insulin resistance.
Oh wow.
And so a lot of people don't realize, because no one really tracks blood sugars unless
Mhm.
it's becoming more popular, which I love. We track
Mhm.
blood sugars with our clients all the time.
Mhm.
But what I tell people is it's really like the 2 hours after your meal, because some people will get a fasted blood sugar on blood work and it looks
Mhm.
fine. That relates a little bit more to stress. If people have
Yeah.
high fasting blood sugar, it's more stress related. But what we look at
Mhm.
is 2 hours after a meal. That's how your body's using energy. And
Mm.
so a lot of times when there's chronic stress, you have chronically elevated blood sugar, and then your body's not burning energy very well and you're gaining weight. And
Yeah.
so, but it's not diagnosable yet. It's not bad enough.
Right.
And
Mhm.
so we see it all the time, sub
Mhm.
levels. But those were the big hormones that I see, the cortisol issue
Yeah.
with stress, which is we're
Mhm.
not, treating our bodies very well, or there's some underlying
Mhm.
issue.
Right.
Insulin, because it starts to become a problem when that chronic stress is happening. And also in perimenopause, because when you lose estrogen and progesterone, testosterone just as a byproduct is your main dominant hormone, and high testosterone will cause insulin resistance in some women,
Got it.
what we
Okay.
see in PCOS. So those are the big situations that I see when
Mhm.
hormones are driving weight issues and body
Yeah.
composition issues.
Yeah. So to kind of dive into that just a little bit more, the insulin, like when you're 2 hours after a meal, if you check your blood sugar and it's high, that could potentially mean that your body isn't digesting your food properly. Is that what you're saying? Like it's not utilizing the
Basically,
food properly.
yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
essentially, bottom line of health in general, we have two energy pathways. We have our
Mhm.
mTOR pathway, which is our sugar burning growth pathway. That's like
Mhm.
growth of muscle, which is great.
Mhm.
Metabolism's healthy, but it's also our disease pathway, growth of
Mhm.
cancer, growth of, tissue, things that we don't
Mhm.
want. Then we
Mhm.
have our AMPK pathway. That's your fat burning pathway. That is, breaking down of tissue. That is regeneration of cells. That is, think keto, autophagy. Like that is a pathway you want to be able to
Okay.
get into. A lot of
Mhm.
people get stuck in the sugar burning pathway
Mm.
because of chronic dieting in the past. The
Yeah.
body is just not in an optimal place metabolically. And we see a lot of women that eat low calorie, that don't lose weight,
Yeah.
often are stuck in
Mhm.
this pathway.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, there's a lot of things you can do. There's a lot of pieces that are maybe part of the puzzle,
Yeah.
but that's most often why we're seeing higher blood sugars, or there's stress, or there's digestive issues that are causing, blood sugars to be elevated, liver stress, there's a lot of pieces that could be causing it, but essentially, yes, your body is not doing a good job of getting blood sugar out of the bloodstream. And blood sugars back down to where we want to see them, which is about mid 80s, low 90s.
Okay. And then, so to think about, stress, because a lot of people think like work stress, life stress, but stress is actually, could it be like too much caffeine, like you're literally like having all this caffeine? It could be you're overtraining, like you're working out too much and you're stressing. So don't just label stress as like, oh, stress at work, like you're stressed there. Yeah, external stressors in your life and your relationships, yes. But there's also, if you're stressing yourself in the gym too much and you're under eating, you're drinking caffeine all throughout the day, and then you're taking a pre-workout, like that can also increase your resting heart rate and your heart rate just elevated all day, which then also causes stress too. So I think that there's lots of different stresses. So it's like almost thinking about your life in a very like full picture way of like, what are all the stresses I'm putting? Well, I'm working 10, 12-hour days. I'm not sleeping. So I'm getting a lot of stress there. I'm drinking a whole pot of coffee every single day. And then I'm having caffeine pop, and then I'm having pre-workout. So I'm all this caffeine in my body, and then I'm not sleeping. So your cortisol is high, your insulin is out of control. And that's why a lot of times I think you probably see a lot of this in your clients, is that it's like, you're just stressing yourself left and right, like all over the place.
The flush that we take our clients through in the first 2 to 3 weeks, I don't let people work out, because you basically, like, most people come to us so systemically overactive that listen, mental emotional stress that we cause to ourselves daily, that's a little bit harder to get under control. I can pull your exercise though. I can pull out caffeine. Those are easy. Those are tangible. And most people are surprised at like how their body does, and like the detox that the body has to go through when we do that. But in general, people just, it's the culture, right? It's the go, go, go culture. It's the hustle culture. I get it. I've been subject to it. I still fight it because, running a business, 2 small kids, I want to look good. I want to feel good. But you have to look at your inputs, eating healthy and working out a lot is healthy until it isn't. Right. And I think a lot of people take it too far because we use it as like our stress outlet, and we think that, oh, I just need to work out harder to burn off what I did yesterday or whatever it might be. More isn't more,
And honestly, that's one of the reasons why we don't even do unlimited memberships here anymore. Like 3 times a week is like what you get when you come in here. Cause it's like, you don't need 5 or 6 workouts a week. You could move in a gym 3 times a week and then get a walk in every other day and some yoga and be perfectly fine and get just as great of results. And especially with the demographic that we have, perimenopause, menopause, like you don't need to be here 5 days a week. You don't need to be here 6 days a week. If you're here 3 times a week and then you're just taking a nice brisk walk on your off days, or hitting some yoga or sitting in a sauna or something like that, like you could feel just as great as you would if you feel like you need to come 5 times a week. And so I think that's why people get mad, because we're like, you're training too much. You need to take recovery days. Like you need to take rest days. Well, no, it's like, no, you don't need to be here that much. Like, I'd love to see you that much, but you don't need to be here that much. And that is, I think, where a lot of people that are going to listen to this need to start. You need to start analyzing your routine and how much you're actually doing. And I think that is going to be the first like aha moment for a lot of people to hear you say that, because we say it all the time. We're like, you're overtraining, you're doing too much. But I think it's like when you're going to say it, people are going to be like, okay, maybe they're right. So I'm glad that we're talking about this. Okay.
I work out 3 to 4 days a week. I work out ideally 4 days a week, and it's 45 minutes. And I have my body, I have stopped conditioning. I walk only, I bodybuild and strength train, and that's about it, because I am a unique situation. Not everyone needs to stop conditioning altogether, but like my body just couldn't handle it anymore. I had done too much damage for too long. So.
And I think that that's a good thing to point out too, is like, if you're not careful, you will screw yourself up for life. Like if you are not careful, if you don't slow down, you will screw yourself up forever. So, okay, cool. All right, good. Let's see. The kind of the second half of that question, it says, if your labs are within normal hormonal ranges, could your hormones still be the problem? And if so, how? Is there a different scale than the one your physician uses that would put the normal ranges into abnormal ranges?
Yeah, so blood work for hormones is challenging because
Hmm.
one, what are you looking at? And what day of the month did you get it? So, for example,
Yeah.
if you are a menstruating female, I like to look at estrogen on day 2 or 3 or day, 19 to 22, basically 5 to 7 days after you ovulate, because that's when
Okay.
you're looking at the comparison of estrogen to progesterone to see is there
Okay.
estrogen dominance. Are we looking at PCOS though? Are we looking at perimenopause? Like what are we looking for, right?
Right.
Blood work ranges are really challenging because if you've noticed, if everyone's ever looked at hormone blood work, it gives you what's normal in luteal phase, what's normal in follicular phase, ovulation, all of that. But the ranges are like, for example, I think the estradiol range is like from 5 to 600 is normal, basically. And so you have to know what you're looking at, right?
Right.
And I will look at hormone blood work. Sometimes you can catch things, but I prefer the Dutch test, which is a urine-based test that
Mm.
we get a bit more information. You can
Okay.
use blood work, and I do use blood work. Just when we're looking at hormones, the Dutch test or saliva-based hormone testing is just a lot better, in my opinion.
Okay. Interesting.
So yes, it can be abnormal, even if it looks normal.
Yeah.
And the other big piece of it that I always go by is like, testing's great, but how do you feel, right? Like,
Hmm.
what are your symptoms? What,
Right. Hmm.
again, what's your inputs?
Hmm.
So we go a lot more off of symptoms that people are dealing
Yeah.
with. And,
Hmm.
I don't care if someone's blood work looks okay. If they're telling me they're not sleeping, they're having
Right.
horrible periods, that, like something's wrong, right? And
Right.
so,
Yeah.
it's
For
a,
symptoms.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that which makes sense because it's like, if you're getting brain fog in the middle of the afternoon, you're waking up a lot in the middle of the night, like you eat and you just feel bloated, like you're not digesting your food properly and things like that. I think those are all things that some people just think are normal. And it's like, that's not normal. Like, it's not normal to have brain fog. It's not normal to crash in the middle of the afternoon. It's not normal to not sleep through the night. It's not normal. These things are not, it's not normal to have bad periods that are uncomfortable, that you can barely move. Those things aren't normal. And I think that you shouldn't normalize that stuff. You should take a step back and go, why am I feeling like this? Like, something clearly is going on in my body that, I need to dive a little bit deeper into, which we're going to talk about some of the things you can do on your own to kind of, start to mitigate that stuff. And then if it needs to go a step further, like obviously, there's your programs that are able to kind of dive a little bit deeper. So good answer on that one. Next question. Can you please ask how much my Hashimoto's hinders me from losing weight while doing 4 workouts a week and eating clean? And I think there was a very similar question to that about PCOS. So maybe
Yeah.
we can kind of tie Hashimoto's with the thyroid and PCOS, because I think
Yeah.
they're kind of almost very similar in a way when it
They
comes to stuff. Are they
they are and
opposite?
they aren't.
Okay.
So Hashimoto's is an autoimmune condition.
Yeah.
It is basically when the autoimmune of like the immune system of the body has attacked the thyroid in particular.
Okay.
So we'll see high antibody levels on blood work. And it's not just the thyroid that's involved. And I think that's the
Mm.
hardest part is like conventional medicine treats Hashimoto's like it treats hypothyroidism.
Mm.
It's not the same. Hashimoto's is your immune system is overactive. So it's systemic.
Right.
It's not just the thyroid. And
Okay.
that's why a lot of people that take thyroid medicine when they have Hashimoto's, like they don't feel that much better.
Mm.
Most often when there's immune system involvement, it's gut related to
Mm-hmm.
an
Okay.
extent. So even if they aren't obvious, there's some type of gut issue going on. But a lot of people with Hashimoto's deal with constipation, food sensitivities, loose stools, bloating, stuff like that. But in
Okay.
general, what I tell people is when you have an autoimmune condition, you have to be more careful. Like
Mm.
you now have a body that is not going to be as resistant to stress. You have a
Yeah.
body that, unfortunately, you're going to probably have to be the person that eats cleaner, removes dairy, gluten, sugar,
Mm-hmm.
alcohol for a period of time. I have plenty of clients that you can get your Hashimoto's into a remission. You can basically
Mm-hmm.
look like you don't have it, and weight loss
Mm-hmm.
can happen,
Mm-hmm.
but you need to be more careful. You need to manage stress better. You need to, be more cognizant of your symptoms. You need to get enough
Mm-hmm.
sleep. You need to watch out with exercise being too intense.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times I recommend things like B12, ashwagandha. Sometimes there's a product called thyrotropin PMG that helps with auto or antibody levels. So there's things that, make it harder, but it's
Yeah.
possible. You just have to
Yeah.
be more careful.
Yeah. And I think that, it's interesting that you bring that up, because I always think a lot of people who have, things like that going on, they don't realize that, like, yeah, it sucks that you have it, but you really have to be more careful. You're just one of those people that really has to dial in your food and eat accordingly to what you're dealing with. And that's just kind of sucks that that's the cards that life dealt you. But like, you're not one of those people that can maybe do like if it fits your macros as flexible, because like you said, you may have to cut out the inflammatory dairy and gluten that could be really causing you to be bloated and more inflamed and have digestion issues. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because it's like, there's no magic pill to fix it. Like, it's just diet. If you really dial in your food and really start cleaning up and getting out the processed foods, like you said, the alcohol, the high saturated fat foods and things like that, you could really feel a lot better just basically by doing that. And so no magic pill for that one. It's just, you got to be a little bit more careful with food. So let's dive into like PCOS in the same sense, because we have a lot of ladies that deal with that. I'm sure you see that very often. It's very common. So I'd be curious. I know diet plays a lot of role in that too, but I'd be curious if there's any other tips you have for that too.
Yeah. So PCOS is tricky because PCOS, there's so much coming out about it recently. I mean, like, it is believed also to be an autoimmune condition, because men also have it. It's not just ovarian related.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, we see men that have PCOS. So polycystic ovarian syndrome, you have to also know what type you have. So there's 4 types of PCOS. There's classical PCOS, which is what a lot of people have, which is basically insulin-based PCOS. So you're insulin resistant. You see high testosterone levels. A lot of women with this will see like acne, cystic acne, hair growth on the face, unwanted hair growth, sometimes hair loss on the head, lots of weight issues. And then you have post-pill PCOS. So basically post-birth control pill induced PCOS, some people will get. Adrenal-based PCOS, which is not as usually insulin related. So people may not have as much like insulin issues or blood sugar or weight issues with that. And then inflammatory PCOS. So blood work helps us understand what type you have. Each are slightly different. Most involve insulin issues, so it does make it harder to lose weight. Get blood work right. But the main things, we recommend following a Mediterranean-based diet, which is low glycemic. You do have to be more careful with sugars and carbohydrate intake. I don't like low carb, but your carbs should be coming from fruits, vegetables, potatoes, foods that lower sex hormone binding globulin. So that is something that binds to testosterone, and females that have PCOS tend to have lower levels of it. So it allows testosterone to get really high. So you want to include things like flaxseed and soy and spearmint tea, green tea, more fiber, more leafy greens, almost always gut involvement. People have gut issues that drove it. That's almost always we see. You need to be careful with inflammation. So sometimes we'll do things like turmeric, fish oil, ginger, and then potentially blood sugar support. So, whether it's myo-inositol or berberine in high doses, ultra glucose control. Sometimes people need spironolactone to control their PCOS if it's really bad. So sometimes there are medications that come into play, but again, a situation where like you cannot handle stress as much, but PCOS women build muscle well. And so I tell them, like, use that to your advantage. Use strength training. Muscle is obviously great for blood sugar balancing and weight management and all of that. You just have to be careful with inflammatory foods. Like, you have to be more careful with your diet. With PCOS.
Yeah, we just keep coming back to that word. Be careful with what you eat. I feel like, it's always like, people just, I think it's like they don't want to like have to think that. They're like, I don't want to have to think like that. I just want to think that there's something else other than me changing how I eat that's going to help me. It's like, sorry, ma'am. Like, it's just what it is. It's like, you just have to eat cleaner. So for both of these things, do you recommend like maybe cutting dairy and gluten for like an extended period of time just to kind of see how you feel?
Yeah, I always, so when we start with clients, we remove all inflammatory foods. It's possible that they aren't reacting to them, but you just don't know. And so when someone's dealing with symptoms and struggling, like, we got to look at gluten's a common reactor. Dairy is a common, especially when hormones are involved. Soy, and then sugar, sometimes corn, and and so, and caffeine for a lot of people. And so we do that for at least 30 to 45, 60 days. And then you slowly start reintroducing things. There are tests that can show you, are you immunologically reacting to these foods? Are you having issues with them? But at the end of the day, like you said, diet plays a huge role. And sometimes there's more that's needed. Like, sometimes diet alone isn't going to do it. And there are people that require more.
Yeah.
But what I will say, diet always needs to be involved. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes other things don't need to be involved, but diet always does. And
Yeah.
so you can't get past that.
Yeah. Do you feel like, and to that same point too, it's like, you know, if you're saying to yourself, like, where do I start? This would be a great place to start. Let's clean up your diet. Maybe get rid of gluten and dairy for, you know, say 45 to 60 days. See how you're feeling. If you start to feel better and you start to do those things, then yeah, you can slowly introduce them back in. But if you're still feeling like crap, you need to go and ask the right person for help. Like, because like you said, it could be more than just what meets the eye. But if you're saying like, where do I start? What's something that I can start doing on my own now?
Absolutely.
Clean up your diet, clean up your food. Okay, cool. All right. Next question says, once you're in menopause, how can diet best help? Also, insulin and carbs, macros are hard to follow because carbs are too high.
Yeah. So menopause is tricky. I work with a lot of perimenopause and menopause clients, and they are by far the most challenging clients because there's a lot going on. Hormones are unpredictable during this time. The biggest things that I look to are, yes, we look at blood sugars. Are you detoxing? Are your digestive systems working properly? Are you going to the bathroom regularly? Because if you're constipated at all or not going daily, you're not detoxing hormones properly. So basically, in general, hormones are meant to be created, they're meant to be used, and then they're meant to be detoxed. And the problem is when people don't go to the bathroom regularly, or they have a lot of digestive issues, and maybe the liver's stressed, you don't get those excess hormones out, and then they recirculate, they create issues. And so menopause, estrogen seems to be the main issue. And then, like I said, when estrogen and progesterone drop off and testosterone becomes that dominant hormone, we see a lot of insulin resistance in menopause. Okay. So for the majority of my menopause clients, unless they are extremely athletic or an anomaly, I don't keep them very high carb. I do higher fat, moderate carb, moderate protein, to be honest. I don't even put them high protein, because proteins our body can take and turn into sugars if we are stuck in that sugar burning state. So muscle, it'll take your protein, and so if you give it high protein, your sugars are going to stay high. So a lot of them I actually push down to more of like Mediterranean or keto. I need to make sure they're eating enough too to start. That's always a problem with a lot of them. They inconsistently eat. And then a lot of them I need to support the liver more. So we need, whether it's, calcium D-glucarate or milk thistle, or there's a couple of different products that I use for liver support. Lots of fiber to make sure that we're binding and detoxing. So in general, that age group does better with less intense workouts, more strength training, walking, less frequency, just yoga, like you said, and then more moderate carb, low carb. And all of their carbs need to come from low glycemic. Unfortunately, again, menopause is a stage that you cannot do what you used to do. It's just, it is the epitome of what used to work doesn't work anymore. And so you need to change. Yeah.
And I think what I have enjoyed about the evolution of our program here is we've really cut back on a lot of the cardio that we do. We've really involved more strength training in our programming because of our demographic. We just launched a Strong 45 class, which is a 45-minute, just pure strength-based sets and reps bodybuilding style class. And I'm assuming it's going to become more popular and probably add more of it in. But that's some of the things we're learning is our demographic needs to pull back on some of that. But we have people that are in their 30s and their 20s, and we still throw those cardios in. But it's like, this is a good, segue of come to the body weight and strength classes that are a little bit slower, that are, just really more strength based versus that high impact cardio. But you don't have to be here 5 days a week. There's no reason to do that because you're just stressing yourself out when you do that. And so this is good. That's a good note for that. And I think also too, like you said, one of the supplements that I started taking the last 90 days is TUDCA. Do you recommend that for liver detox and stuff like that? Okay.
Yeah. So I love TUDCA.
I pee a lot after I take it, TMI, but I do. So true is working.
The biggest piece about liver supports is you have to be careful about how strong they are. So TUDCA is a little stronger, and the liver is kind of Pandora's box. If you open it and get it flowing, it can cause symptoms for people. So if there's a lot of other stuff going on that they may not have realized. So some people get itchy skin or rashes, some people get headaches or nausea. And so I'm always the liver's an amazing thing to get moving. But stay hydrated when you're working the liver. There's a lot of things you got to do to support the liver, only because again, it's kind of, if you open it up, it can release some stuff.
Interesting.
So, but I do love TUDCA. I use it frequently.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, cool. All right. Last question I have here says, how does night shift affect hormones and weight gain or loss? Anything that can be done to help? We do have a lot of nurses that are night shift workers here.
Night
So
shift
I mean,
is
it's
so
just
hard. And what I tell them is like, get out of it as soon as you can. That's honestly like, there's so much research because our bodies are clocks. They are circadian clocks that run on the sun and the moon. They do not run on us. Like, and so our systems, every organ in our body runs on a clock. And you can Google this, like look up circadian rhythm, body internal clock, Chinese medicine. Like you'll see all of the different systems that work at different times of the day. And our body's meant to detox overnight. And if we are not sleeping, and most of those people do not sleep straight 7 to 8 hours. They'll sleep broken amounts, and they might accumulate that amount, but they're still not getting that like solid sleep in. And so what it does is it will raise cortisol. And then a lot of times what we see is actually low cortisol over time because that cortisol just gets burned out per se. Your body becomes insensitive to it. And then we see a lot of lower growth hormone because our body produces growth hormone overnight as we sleep. So these people don't have as much growth hormone, which leads to, bone density issues, fatigue, depression, anxiety. A lot of times we'll see hunger hormone impairment. So if anyone's pulling an all-nighter, you know how hungry you are for carbs the next day. We see a lot of snacking. We see a lot more, just overconsumption of calories with this population. And research shows like they are more susceptible to metabolic issues. They are more susceptible to heart disease, obesity because of the stress. Not because even a lot of them still have healthy lifestyles with eating and with working out. It's because of the stress. And the biggest things you can do, again, it's kind of like the PCOS, the Hashimoto's, you just have to work harder. Like you are battling an uphill battle. And so you have to be more careful with your diet. You have to be more careful with stressing your body elsewhere, alcohol, all of those things. Obviously hydration, a lot of them tend to have digestive issues too. So staying on top of making sure you're not, heading that route. It's hard. It's really hard on the body. And I get it, right? Like we need night workers. We do. But try to get out of it as fast as you can.
Yeah. I think, so if somebody is in that situation, like from an eating cycle perspective, is it better to kind of like eat a small meal before you go to work and then try to fast while you're there and then eat when you get home before you go to sleep? Like, I mean, what would you kind of, if you had to
want to eat
choose
consistently? So I usually have people eat every 3 to 4 hours in these situations because when you go long, if anyone fasts, we have to prepare them to fast because if someone that's already inflamed, stressed, whatever, fasting's a stressor. And if your body cannot positively adapt to stressors, it's the same thing with exercise. If the body's too stressed, we are not positively adapting to the stressor we're introducing, whether it's a good stressor or not. Like exercise is a great stressor, but it can become a bad stressor if your body can't adapt to it. And so the same thing is with fasting. I tell people try to just keep a consistent eating schedule, do what makes you feel good. But when we have cortisol elevating to keep blood sugars stable, because that's kind of how they work, is when blood sugar gets too low, cortisol will rise to bring blood sugar back up. If you go long periods without eating, your blood sugars will drop and cortisol will keep going. What you can do though is you can eat. And that keeps blood sugar more stable if you're eating balanced meals every 4 hours or so, and there are people that I absolutely fast. And I think that that's very helpful for them. But in most cases, you need to get blood sugar regulated through eating consistently and eating balanced meals.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay. So just to kind of wrap this up, if somebody's listening to this and they're going to be like, holy crap, there's so much stuff. Yeah. What would you say are like the top 3 things to start doing on your own if you feel like you could be struggling with some of these things and before you maybe reach out to somebody like you, for that additional support?
Yeah. I'm going to give you 5.
That works. I'll take it.
And I'll be quick. So number 1 is I keep most clients, or I start most clients at a Mediterranean-based anti-inflammatory diet. It is the most research-based diet that lowers inflammation across the board. It's got good protein, but not too much. We usually do mostly fish, seafood, turkey, easier on digestion. We moderate even chicken. I'm fine with chicken, but I do keep it in moderation because it is hard to digest. And red meat, because again, when the body's inflamed, saturated fat can be really healthy for you. But if you have an inflamed situation, it can actually be damaging. So keep proteins more anti-inflammatory, easy to digest. lots of fiber. I have people track fiber like 30 to 40 plus grams a day if you can from real food, not from fiber supplements. And then, you know, removing seed oils, things like soybean oil, corn oil, vegetable oil, you know, don't use olive oil to cook, use it for dressings and marinades, but, you know, think avocado oil and coconut oil for cooking. Those can be really toxic and inflammatory to the body. So Mediterranean-based diet is number one for sure. It helps remove gluten naturally. It helps remove dairy. I use some feta, you know, some not as dairy heavy, or cow's milk heavy. Adequate hydration. So I do, you know, at least usually 100 ounces of water a day for clients with LMNT and potassium electrolytes. Most often, I tell people all the time, like 50 to 60% of people's symptoms could be resolved by being hydrated. It causes more inflammation. It causes puffiness. And a lot of people that don't have enough water intake, their body stores more water extracellularly, which makes them bloated and puffy, versus intracellularly, which makes you look lean and toned. And so your weight may not change, but you're going to look more puffy and bloated when you're dehydrated. So that's a huge thing that I have people do. Sleep. You know, if you're not sleeping, you need to figure out why. If it's hard to fall asleep, we usually see that as like, yeah, that can be a circadian rhythm melatonin thing. If it's hard to stay asleep, that's usually a cortisol blood sugar thing. So you need to get sleep though. And I always tell people like at least 7 hours in bed, at least. Figure it out. People are like, I just figure it out. You need to adjust your schedule to make it happen. Because losing weight and feeling good without adequate sleep is near impossible. Exercise and move your body, but be smart. Like you know, not getting adequate sleep, but waking up at 5 a.m. to do a workout is stabbing yourself in the leg. Like listen to your body, know your body. If exercise, you know, a lot of people, like I said, I need to feel like I worked out. I need to push my body hard. But if you're exhausted then the rest of the day and you can't keep your eyes open, but you got your 5 a.m. workout in, like it's not helping, right? So I usually encourage people 3 to 4 days a week, some variation of resistance training or strength training, and walking adequately. You know, and if you want to throw in a yoga there, here or there, not the high intensity, hot, sweating your balls off yoga, like go stretch your body, you know, blood flow. And then support the liver. That's the, you know, and I think this, you can use, whether it's, you know, milk this, I use a powder called Metapure, or Optapure is a great product. Smoothies, lots of fiber, you know, fermented foods, those all help support the liver, broccoli, cauliflower, cruciferous vegetables. But the liver is extremely important to help detox the body. And it tends to help people feel better when it's working better. And it controls like 10 to 20% of our metabolism. And so a lot of times when people's livers become burdened, and you'll see that with high cholesterol, high triglycerides, high blood sugars, that's a sign that your liver is kind of struggling, digestion issues. It just makes it really, really hard for the body to release toxins when the liver's overstressed. So like those 5 things that's kind of the
good place to start. Yeah. Of course, it comes back to all of the usual things: diet, sleep, hydration, movement, rest, and recovery.
And again, like
that's just what it is.
There might be more there. And that's a lot of the clients that I deal with, the people that do those things and are still struggling. Like, those are the people we need to dive deeper. Those are the people that might need testing. Like those people exist. But you need to be doing those things. Those
consistently.
Those foundations. Consistent.
I think consistently is the word, because I will get people that'll listen to this. Well, I'm doing that like 1 or 2 days a week, or like, have you been doing it for the last like 30 to 45 days and you're still not feeling better? Like you're doing it every 7 days a week, not just Monday through Friday, Saturday and Sunday too, like all week long. Like I feel like you really have to be consistent with something like this first. And then like you said, if you are doing that 7 days a week, you're getting your sleep, you're doing all the things and you still feel like shit, then it's like, okay, there has to be an underlying issue. But I do really, truly think that a lot of the people that are going to listen to this are going to be like, okay, maybe I should do all those things first consistently, and then I'll think if I have a problem. Because I think it's easy to just go to, oh, my hormones are screwed up, or this. And it's like, but if you take a look in the mirror and you really evaluate your routine and like what you've been doing consistently, you're probably going to be like, I drink, you know, Saturday, Friday nights and Saturdays. I don't really track my food. Like, of course, I don't get a lot of sleep on the weekends because I'm up staying up with friends and doing stuff. So okay, maybe I should try this first and then
Yep.
think about that. So, okay, cool. This was great. And I think this is going to be awesome for a lot of people to listen to. So where can they find you, Becca, on social media?
Absolutely. So my Instagram is pretty easy. It's at the Hormone Queen. So at THE Hormone Queen, QUEEN. That's where I post, tons of content. I'm there daily. You can find me there. And then
perfect.
Our, company, Fit Mom Life, we work with women, and so if you feel like this spoke to you and you feel like you do these things and you need further help, that is what we dive into with all of our clients one-on-one. Awesome. We work remotely, and it helps a lot of women, which is what we want. So
I love that.
You can,
awesome.
Email me, Becca@fitmomlife.com, or reach out to me on Instagram, and those are the two places that I'm at.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Becca. I appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll have you back on the podcast soon.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. If you like this episode, subscribe to our YouTube channel or find our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or whatever your favorite place is to listen to podcasts. And if you really liked this episode, please leave a review for us on iTunes. Thanks, and we'll see you next week.